Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast, your source for insights and ideas on how to lead your church in the 21st century. At the Future Christian Podcast, we talk to pastors, authors, and other faith leaders for helpful advice and practical wisdom to help you and your community of faith walk boldly into the future. Whether you're a pastor, church leader, or a passionate member of your faith community, this podcast is designed to challenge, inspire, and equip you with the tools you need for impactful ministry. And now for a little bit about the guest for this episode.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. Today, Loren Richmond Jr. is in conversation with Mike Orr. Mike has been a youth worker since the late 1990s, serving churches in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, California, and Colorado. He earned his MDiv from Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. For over 10 years, he has been the director of student ministries at Broomfield United Methodist Church, located in the northern suburbs of Denver. He lives with his wife and 3 dogs in Denver, and he has written 0 books. A reminder before we start today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Future Christian with a friend. Connect with Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. Shoot us an email at loren@resonatemediapro.com with comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes. We appreciate your voice in how we faithfully discern the future of the church.
Hello and welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. This is Loren Richmond Jr. and I'm recording live and in person at Broomfield United Methodist Church with Mike Orr. Hello, welcome to the show.
Loren, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's great. Great to be here. We're recording, in the basement?
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. This is like where all the good podcasts happen, though, is in some church basement, I think.
Yeah. AA meetings.
Right.
Youth group.
Right.
And podcasts.
Right. So my favorite episodes are always in-person episodes. So I'm hoping we can have a good conversation today. But before we get started, anything else you want our listeners to know about you?
Oh, man. Inside in a basement with computers is not my place.
Yeah.
Outdoors on a bicycle or on skis or on a trail somewhere
Mm-hmm.
is my place, especially if it's with my dogs. If it's with my dogs and my wife, double bonus, man. Love being outside. Love leading ministry opportunities outside as well, in the great outdoors. And so living in Colorado, man, is just world class.
Mm-hmm.
See, man, I get to do all sorts of really great things in the mountains and beyond. So I love that. Let's see, other things you might want to know about me. The bio, I think, will mention that I have written 0 books, but I have read many books. So love reading, love having deep discussions with people, and I hope people aren't caught off guard when we go unexpectedly deep, but I love having those unexpectedly deep conversations, whether it's on a ski lift or at a brewery, or where all of a sudden it turns to things that have eternal consequences, that are beyond just I don't know, good bikes and good beer and good dogs.
I suppose we're already getting off track here, but I was just thinking about this because we've talked a little bit about Andrew Root, and I was thinking about an episode I had with him.
It was a good episode.
Did you listen? Yeah, thanks for listening. But I was thinking about, we were talking about this idea of being ontologically marked, which is a big word to sort of say, to think of it this way, that God marks us almost as a safe person to talk to.
Mm-hmm. In our very being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I posted this on Facebook, Sunday at church, in this church on Sunday, someone came up and started talking to me about their family struggles. And I'm not on staff here. I think they know that I'm a chaplain, but I was also I was struck by in the moment I couldn't even remember her name.
Yeah.
I felt kind of bad.
Mm-hmm. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, sure. But so I think I guess what I'm saying is like, I think like there's something to that. Like, and I'm sure you've noticed that yourself. You're like, why do people keep talking to me?
Well, I think it's why I decided on a psychology degree in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also why I went on to an MDiv, Master of Divinity, in seminary. I think it's why youth ministry has been a calling for me. Is that I guess I'm one of those who will be that way my whole life. That people just are like, I can open up to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's like this brilliant, exhilarating moment, and sometimes, and especially when I was younger, it felt like this burden that I didn't know how to handle. It's like it could feel overwhelming quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think having some training now and just more experience, being older and more mature about it, makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, since we've talked a little bit around it, talk about like your formative years, like what it looked like to be a Christian in the past, what it looks like today, in between.
Yeah. So my kind of faith journey, I grew up in the church. My dad is a now honorably retired Presbyterian pastor from USA. And so grew up in church, grew up kind of in the fishbowl of being a And so I guess I've kind of always been one, as long as I can remember, who more people know of me than I know of them. Like they know more about me. People know my name than whose names I know. And so people here in this community are very forgiving of that, which is nice. There's a lot of grace. But growing up, I think there was always for me an awareness of spiritual things, always a sense that Christianity, and then maybe more specifically Christian community, was very important, central to our family life, and wasn't an option for us.
Yeah.
For good or for ill, overall, I didn't end up being one of the really rebellious pastor's kids. You go kind of either way.
Right.
Here I am, obviously, talking about Christian themes with people who are kind of like, for lack of a better term, like professional Christians. I kind of hate that idea, but here we are. When I was very young, my parents have stories of me, I don't know, being spiritual. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was obvious to them that I had some sort of connection with God. But it wasn't until I was kind of middle school age that I made the first kind of conscious decision. Like I made a choice, and it involved accepting God's love in a way that, man, I don't remember even who it was at camp, of course, right? I was like,
right.
I don't even remember what they said. They just gave us an opportunity to go off on our own. And I remember having this moment with God that felt realer and deeper than anything I'd experienced up to that point. And it's funny, I tell this story sometimes because for me, I kind of point to that moment. Not that I think that everyone has like Paul on the road to Damascus kind of moment.
Right.
Actually, almost everyone doesn't have
that. Right.
But if I had to point to something, that would be it. But I think there are lots of tiny little steps along the way. My brother would point to a different moment, which is, I'm an older brother. I've got one younger brother. And I was not a very good older brother for a lot of years. I was mean, and we fought, and I was unkind. Andrew, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. And you know this. We've talked about this. And when I was 16, another church camp thing, just felt God asking me through the keynote speaker, asking me to ask God to restore a relationship. And for me, it was obvious which one that had to be. It had to be my brother, because I knew it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, apparently, I actually don't remember the changes. I think I thought that God would change my brother to be less annoying.
Oh, man.
Like,
here's some truth right here.
And that is not what happened at all.
Nope.
God softened my heart. God changed me.
Yeah.
And that's what my brother would point to as when I became a Christian.
Wow.
Very interesting, right? And it wasn't until a year later that I was back at that same camp. I had this moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm best friends with my brother now.
Wow.
And we fought constantly before that. So I've had all these moments in my life where God has clearly been at work, that like the kinds of transformation that I can't attribute to like willpower,
right,
or like hearing the right message changed me, but only that God did something in my life. And that continued as I started to do ministry in the late 1990s, and work with young people until now.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned like being outside is important to you.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating, just your comment there about your spirituality not being like your willpower, your efforts. I mean, I think we could have an entire conversation around that, like how much spirituality or religiosity these days is seen as like self-built. But what are some spiritual practices for you that kind of like help you stay grounded, connected?
It's good. I have a kind of prayer and movement practice. I don't want to sound too like Eastern or anything.
Sure.
But maybe it is kind of that. For me, it developed during the pandemic when, like, as a ministry professional, just felt very lost and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I went from feeling like I really knew what my job was and how to do it and do it well.
Right.
To not knowing what my job was or how to do it well. Sort of feeling, rather than like developing relationships with young people and helping them to learn what it means to follow Jesus, it felt like content creation and online classroom management. And I was like, I did not sign up for this. And
I did not learn this in seminary.
This was not a seminary class. This has not been part of any of my ongoing training.
Yeah.
And so, and I was having trouble sleeping. I think a lot of us were.
Yeah.
And so I developed kind of some evening routines that had to do with breath and prayer and movement. And I have resisted for almost my whole life anything that's kind of like rigid or routine or like ritualistic. And I found that these rigid routine rituals became this beautiful life-giving thing for me.
Yeah.
And so I've continued with that. And it feels so intimate that I don't even talk about details.
Yeah.
That is
fair.
So sorry, listener. It feels so intimate to me with my time with God.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. Also just being out in nature. Some of those moments have been very much just awestruck moments of God. You are so big and so good. You've made such beauty. So I try to be outside as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then, I guess probably some of the other things in terms of community that people are used to, and whether it's, Bible reading or devotional moments.
Yeah.
Really, those other two are more primary for me now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So Mike and I sort of began this conversation informally and then semi-formally through like a training he was leading. And then I was like, we just got to keep talking about this because I think it's obviously super important to the context of Christianity and faith right now. And I think has relevance beyond, what we can probably imagine. But when I was driving over here, I want to start the conversation with this, to start us off light. So we're around the same age. I think we went both, you studied psychology in undergrad.
Yeah.
I actually trained for youth ministry in undergrad, like at a Bible college. But I'm curious, like when you think back of like, you're probably in that circle and sphere of like youth ministry, right? Like what are some things like looking back, you sort of like laugh at and be like, what were we doing?
Oh man, the easy one is like, there are some games we used to play in youth ministry that now have like, in some cases have been like either outlawed or banned.
Right.
For safety issues. But like, so some of that stuff where it's like why do
Chubby Bunny.
That's a prime example. Where it's like, no, what? What 24? Yeah, that was me. I was a 24-year-old who thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
I was the 21-year-old.
Right.
I know.
Right.
We'll do this. My brain was not fully developed. So I think some of those things. Also, I think, we're talking kind of about the 90s here. 90s. And I think there was a movement away from some things that it was good that we moved away from, but we, continued, I think, to be kind of emotionally coercive of our kids.
Yeah.
Emotionally coercive in a way that kind of drove them to make an emotion-based decision about God or Jesus or fill in the blank. That we set up scenarios where there was a lot of either kind of guilt or fear. And I think, to be clear, this has not totally gone away.
Right.
Like, this is definitely still a huge part of a lot of ministries.
Right.
All around.
Well, this is the second part of the question that's coming up, but keep going.
Yeah. So, those are some things like, it's like, oh man, why do we so I'm sorry, I took the lighthearted thing.
No, because this was the question, the second half of the question I wanted to ask you. Like, in some ways, the serious question is like, when we look at, I don't want to throw stones too much here, but like, we kind of look at like a lot of the mega church or big church models that are very emotionally quasi-manipulative. Do you think, like, I've had this conversation, I think, with people before, like, do you think, like, in some ways it's just like youth pastors who grew up with the same kind of training you and I had, who've kind of just taken that to another level, another scale?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, what do you teach other than what you know, right?
Right.
And how do you do a thing other than how you've
Right.
always done it or seen it done?
Right.
Definitely, right? And without like really focused and intentional intervention, then you just kind of repeat the mistakes of the past. And I mean, the emotional manipulation or whatever. I hope nobody hears that I'm saying that there's no emotion involved in spirituality or in religion or in faith.
Yes.
Because my faith in Jesus is deeply emotional.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that I was coerced into it. I don't feel like somebody manipulated me in order to get there. And I don't think that God is manipulative in that way.
Right.
I don't think that God coerces us at all. I think God pursues us.
Yeah.
And there's a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I don't know if that kind of comes out the question.
Yeah. That's helpful. Yeah. I was just thinking about like, it's kind of like that guilt shame paradox, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think guilt is not necessarily a bad thing because guilt like reminds me like this, I'm not living up to the values that I claim to want to live up to. But when that turns into shame, then it's like, well, that's not helpful. And I think without getting too into the weeds here of 90s, right, ministry and theology or practical theology, it was kind of like shame based, at least as I remember it. Like,
definitely. Yeah. And I defined somebody, I didn't come up with this. I can't remember where I got it. I think of guilt as feeling bad about something that you've done. Shame as feeling bad about who you are.
Right.
And I think it's totally appropriate to feel bad about something you've done if it was a thing you shouldn't have done.
Right.
Like there's all sorts of things we maybe should feel guilty about. But I don't think that shame is usually very helpful or healthy. And I mean, we could get off into the weeds again, on a tangent, but like part of the 90s was purity culture and shaming people about their sexuality.
Right.
And kind of the, I think, natural God-given impulses that we have, our sexuality.
Right.
And since then, a lot of the prime leaders in that movement have been like, I am so sorry that I did something bad, something evil. And so that's another thing that I look back on, like, man, we put rings on about what? And not that I think that there isn't a healthy way or a healthier ways to approach sexuality and romance and relationships than the way that our culture typically does it.
Right.
But man, like going hard way the other way, like didn't work either. So finding a way to talk well about all areas of life. Is super.
So this kind of leads into, or I'm going to force us into some kind of like bringing this into like your work presently with Gen Z, or shout out to my Canadian co-host, Martha Tatarnik, Gen Z. And she would say, up north, like when we think about, I mean, I think this was something that was fascinating for me when I heard this from you, just how different like the current generations are versus like when we think about class, like I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the 90s were like the heyday of youth ministry. When we think about, was it Doug Fields and youth specialties, and what do you think is different? Yeah. What do you think is different today, especially dealing with students, whatever terminology we want to give them, versus when you think about like the 90s?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'll add in Gen Alpha there too. So
Yeah.
kind of Gen Z and Gen Alpha that our ministry is working with now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they see the world in a different way than most of us did in the 90s and the generations before. You and I are kind of right around that Gen X millennial shift.
Mm-hmm.
So some people call us cuspers.
Oh, I've not heard that.
Yeah, we're born executives. I don't know.
Yeah, Zennials. Yeah. I don't want to say what year, from my kids are listening.
I was born in 1979. So, I am kind of right on the edge there.
Yeah.
And we as Gen X, and millennials kind of had this focus on kind of like world changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you figure out how you're going to change the world.
Right.
You're going to know everything else about what you
Yeah.
do. And the generation before us, kind of baby boomers and older, had this idea that, like once you know who you are and what your identity is,
right,
then you'll be able to kind of figure out all these other things. And for our Gen Z and Gen Alpha friends, it's belonging first. It's
mm-hmm.
who are my people? Where do I belong? And then the others flow. And so we talk about these three things, kind of intertwining, all stemming from three of the major questions that we asked during adolescence. And that is like, who am I? What am I going to do with this life I've got? And where do I belong? So it's the identity question, the, kind of autonomy or purpose question, and the belonging question. And we answer that differently. And, it turns out, and this is, I did not invent any of this. Marco Oestreicher gets some credit here. Chap Clark gets some credit here. Fill in a bunch that I
mm-hmm.
care about.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, those who are in older generations, like say boomers and older, and probably older Gen Xers, would view two of the tasks of adolescence through the lens of another. We all do this. So, they would view belonging and kind of like their purpose in life, kind of how they're going to behave in the world through the lens of identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like once I know who I am, then I know how to behave and where I belong.
Yeah. Okay.
And then for kind of the middle generation in our current context, kind of the maybe younger Gen Xers, older millennials, maybe most millennials would have thought of like, well, once I know how I'm going to change the world, once I know how I'm going to impact this planet,
yeah,
then I know who I am.
Yeah.
And then I know the people I belong to.
Yep.
And that really resonates with
mm-hmm.
a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to be a world changer. You got to know how, like, what's your cause?
Yeah.
Right. And once you know that, then you know your people.
Yeah. I feel like you're preaching to me right now.
Yeah. And so if you come from a boomer mindset or an older millennial or Gen X mindset, then you can really, really miss how an adolescent sees the world,
mm-hmm.
because they view it through belonging first. And they know who their people are. They know their friends. They know their kind of close-knit group. And that tells them who they are and like what's important in the world and how they're going to affect the world, like what their purpose is. And so if you try to start with one of the others, you're talking right past them. If you don't start with belonging. And a lot of churches and a lot of religious organizations or parachurch organizations in the past have kind of started with this idea that, well, you have to believe the right things. You have to have this,
mm-hmm.
at least intellectual assent.
Right.
A certain set of dogmatic principles. And then we expect that you will behave a certain way. Don't do the bad things, do the good things. and then you're part of the group.
Yeah.
And if we do it that way with this generation, it's a completely flat message. It's like an alien language.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my ministry, it's belonging first. Kids, we hope, find a place where it can be theirs. Like, these are their people. This is their place.
Mm-hmm.
And we find as they do that they start to kind of behave in the ways that the group expects. And we're actually pretty vocal about our expectations for each other.
Yeah.
When we hold each other to those expectations. And we find that often, not always, but often, kids start to believe the things that I believe, or that we believe.
Right.
That we say we believe anyway.
Right.
And it's a different paradigm for kind of how to do community and belonging.
It's a really different paradigm. I do want to ask a question about belonging. I was just reading this book from, let's see if I can get her name right. I think it's Tanita Maddox. Hopefully going to have her on the pod here soon. And she does talk about belonging, like the challenge that in some sense, as she understands it, among Gen Z, Gen Alpha, like there's this like sense that like belonging means total acceptance. Like, we're not going to ask you to change or grow. Like, how do you navigate that? Because like you certainly, like you said, you want to let young people know this is a safe space. You can belong here, but also like, I'm not going to let you just, be a jerk forever. Like, I'm going to ask you to grow.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate that?
Well, growth, I think that's a great word.
Okay.
In Wesleyan circles,
Yeah.
church, we talk about different movements of grace, and one of them being sanctifying grace.
Yeah.
A holy way of talking about like getting better, right? Like, we don't expect that everybody's going to have it all together, but there is a wholeness, WHO, wholeness, that we desire for ourselves and for each other that comes with maturity. And so accepting where anyone is right now, but also expecting that we're moving in a direction toward maturity, toward wholeness. And this, I think, a lot of Bible translations get the idea. They use the word perfect, right?
Right.
So this word perfection, we see it in a bunch of spots. And when Jesus talks about like, be perfect, therefore as your Father in heaven is perfect, the only translation that I know that I think gets it right, or gets at the whole idea, is the CEB, the Common English Bible, says, therefore be complete in showing love in the way that your Father is complete in showing love. This idea that perfection isn't about flawlessness, but about completeness.
Yeah.
If you've got the perfect set of something, it's not because they're undamaged or have no little blemishes. It's because you've got the whole thing. And so, belonging doesn't have to negate or hinder, or certainly like not expect growth and maturity, spiritual maturity, all kinds of maturity, and wholeness and perfection in the idea of being more complete. So practically speaking, I think that means being upfront about expectations, whether it's around behavior or kind of like there are things that are totally normal when you're a child that would be like ludicrous as an adult.
Right.
We don't expect you to be an adult when you're a child.
Right.
But we do want to aim in that direction. And I think the difference sometimes is that maybe in some circles, there are some things about a person that we believe are maybe bad or wrong.
Right.
And should be expunged, should be removed somehow through the life of faith or through God's work, through the Holy Spirit. And maybe it depends on the set of those things. Like, what are those things? At our church and in our denomination, we're very affirming of LGBTQ folks. That's not true across Christendom, across Christian circles, and totally understand and recognize that. So in some Christian circles, that maturity would mean that maybe you would leave behind a certain identity or lifestyle, as they would maybe say. And for me, that wouldn't be one of the things on the list.
Right.
I wouldn't expect you to grow out of being gay or grow out of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I guess it kind of also means, it depends on like what you mean by acceptance or
Right.
accepting.
Right.
The refusal to accept like certain kinds of destructive behaviors, I think is important. And I think that also goes to probably people's definition of sin.
Yeah.
Like what is sin?
Yeah.
And how rigidly is that defined? And I haven't fully fleshed out my thoughts on that, so I don't have any more to say.
Well, I have a Substack coming out on that. I'd like you to read now.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. So this does lead into something that I've been curious about, like just coming over here. I was listening to a podcast, an Andrew podcast, talking about like this quiet revival happening. I don't know if you've heard this term, like in the UK, there's, and parts of Scandinavia, I guess there's like, I guess legitimate data that like baptisms are way up, especially of young men. Like we've seen these kind of stories, I think, right in the States of like young men coming back into church. I mean, I think this was like, and this is kind of like right when I turned it off, they were talking about like wrestling with this, like, what do you do? Because to some extent, like, at least in the States, it seems like young men, I think we could probably agree on this, like, are kind of in a crisis.
Yeah.
And B, like, there's some coming into church, but I'm not, how do I say this, Jen? Like, I'm not like in love for necessarily all their motivations for why they're coming into church. Like, it seems like in some context, and I don't want to be too critical here, but like, it seems like in some contexts, like the space being offered to them is like strict, kind of like societal, like, rules, regulations, like traditionalism.
Tell me what to believe.
Right.
Tell me what to believe, and I will hold on to that, and I'll run with it.
Right. Because I'm kind of the opinion, like, I think people like need some kind of like scripting, but also they don't need straitjackets. And I'm worried that what's being presented now is almost like too much of a straitjacket to some extent.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a long-winded question, but what I'm trying to get at is like, have you wrestled with, like, certainly you come across a wide variety of kids here in your ministry here, or more broadly speaking, like, how do you wrestle with like you want to be open and trust that the Spirit can move in people, whereas also being like, I mean, is that just going back to what you said, like expectations up front?
Gosh.
Like a young man comes to you and he's like, let's be frank, he's wearing a MAGA hat. And he's like, hey, Charlie Kirk inspired me to get into my faith. Like, I think we want to be open to him, but also I can't have him being like,
saying maybe some of the things that you
in
those circles.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's probably the difference between like a role model and an authoritarian figure, or because I think I can be an authority figure without being an authoritarian figure.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. And so there are a number of young people, and maybe even some not so young people, who think of me as an authority of some sort in their lives.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I have to be the one who says, here's your jacket. It's
Right.
straight.
Right.
Let's tie it on up. How can you?
Thank you for playing with the metaphor with me here.
So we can offer different kinds of ways of looking at faith, at spirituality, at following Jesus. And we're talking about Christianity here, right?
Right.
I think a lot of people, gosh, I know I have lots of friends who either grew up in the church or are continuing to be part of the church who have a real hard time with the label Christian, right?
Yeah.
Because it has been in many ways co-opted by
political ideology. Let's just be frank.
Political ideology, I think, is a great word for it. I ran across a quote from Billy Graham, actually. I used it in another podcast not long ago, and I'm going to butcher it. I won't say it completely. He basically said he was very, very deeply concerned about the idea of a marriage between Christianity, especially conservative Christianity, and the political right. He said the political right is only in it to manipulate. And that was in 1981.
Yeah.
And it feels very, prescient.
Prescient.
We like, it feels like that is what has happened. And what breaks my heart so much is seeing friends and family members and people I love who it seems so clear to me that there's been a manipulation happening, but they don't see it. They see it as something more like well, finally now we have the people, and now it's us. Now it's our turn.
Yeah.
And I just never felt like I've ever seen anything in the Gospels or in Paul's teachings where it's like now it's my turn.
Now it's my turn.
Like,
yeah.
That's kind of this almost antithetical to the way of Jesus.
I mean, yeah, I hopefully you don't mind getting into this, but I just think about like I was kind of surprised to see this, like my old youth pastor posting on Facebook that today's Charlie Kirk Day. I mean,
is it
more? I don't know. I just was like, what?
Decided.
Yeah, someone just said like this is Charlie Kirk Memorial Day, and like I was really like not a fan of like certainly the way he went about things. Like I was even worse a fan of some of the responses to his awful and tragic killing. But also I'm kind of like troubled by this idea that like he is being held up as like martyrs, like this is the idea of like what it means to be a good Christian. So
I'm curious to me as well.
And I'm like, this is where again I think about me being a 40-something man. And I think about like my son, I think about other young men and teenage boys, and I'm like, how do I model for them a healthy masculinity that's not like, like I want them to be passionate about their faith, but I also don't think like being a jerk.
Yeah. And that's, I think, I guess to go back to the idea of, modeling, role model, authority figure rather than authoritarian figure.
Right.
However I want to say it. How can I be an adult in the life of a young person, maybe especially a young man, that models faithful life with Jesus?
Yeah.
But isn't abrasive about it? I don't know if the word is abrasive. I'm not trying to indoctrinate anybody. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm not even trying to argue anything. I have conversations.
I mean, gosh, that was like the 90s, like, wasn't it?
Yeah, like apologetics and
evidence that demands a verdict. This idea that like we could like argue people into their faith, and I think to some extent, like we've seen that almost. That's become like the thing politically. The move is like, if I can either argue you into your changing your opinion or shame you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of. There have always been some people that have been attracted to that,
right?
And modeling things, right? And there are certain strands of Christianity, certain kind of faith traditions and theological traditions in Christianity that lend themselves more to that kind of argumentative style, or premises. Like I got a premise, and a conclusion style, right? Where you're like, it's very logical. I don't see. I mean, Paul did that maybe a little bit, but not in the classical kind of Greek philosophy style. Jesus didn't seem to care about that at all. And there's when I was in seminary, I had a friend, we were having a conversation about this kind of thing. I was like, but like, aren't those people just, we were talking about this kind of, movement, like, well, but if you can argue this and you can like convince somebody of this thing, I'm like, I said something like, but I feel like, aren't those people just a-holes?
Yeah.
Like, they're just being jerks. They just want to be right. Right. And like, I think there are other ways. Right. And so I want to be, maybe it's, the young man in the MAGA hat that you mentioned before who comes and has a bunch of ideas. I'm not going to necessarily argue those ideas with him.
Right.
I think number one, it won't be fair.
Right.
Like, I don't mean to sound,
disparaging
of a young person or to lift myself up, but like, I've been around longer. I've argued for longer. I have extensive education. And that I don't want to, any listeners who like Charlie Kirk or who are big fans to get mad. and I don't know much about him. And when people talked about him being a Christian martyr, I was like, well, everything I saw of him, none of it seemed to be around Christianity. It was around political right things, which is fine.
Right.
Like, and the problem that I had with him wasn't his necessarily his ideology.
Right.
It was that he presented things as honest arguments.
Right.
And he was an elite level debater talking with random kids on a college campus.
Right.
In a way that was kind of belittling in my view. And I don't want to be one who belittles people. I was talking with somebody about this recently, and maybe I can be condescending. I can be. Maybe you haven't seen this because I've matured. There has been some sanctification in my life.
Well, I just laughing because I love to be condescending. Like, I love that idea. It feels great. It feels
so juicy.
Yeah, when you're just like smart owing the other person.
You make somebody feel so small.
Yeah.
That is just so far from the way of Jesus to me. Now, Jesus did do that with me with the Pharisees sometimes.
Right.
Like,
well, isn't that, I'm sorry to jump in, but like, isn't that it, I think, in some ways? Because like shame, to go back to the idea of like, sometimes we do need shame. Like frankly, some of our leaders right now could use to feel some shame about some of the actions that are going on in our nation, like the way they're treating immigrants.
The least of these. Like,
I want them to feel some shame about that.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't think we necessarily need to be shaming everybody.
No, certainly not. So when I think of like how I would approach a young person who I disagree with, which happens all the time.
Right.
We have conversations that respect the dignity.
Yeah.
And intellect.
Yeah.
And even morality.
Right.
Of the person that I'm talking with. Because when we disagree with someone, especially about something we really care about, it seems like there are a small handful of kind of go-to reactions we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that, oh, well, if you don't think the way I do, then you must either be stupid.
Right.
You can't comprehend it on the level that I can comprehend.
Right.
Maybe you're evil.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have decided that you know this is bad and you like it anyway. Or that you're like crazy. You're like mentally unwell.
Right.
And almost none of those are ever actually true.
Right.
And they always dehumanize.
Right.
They always make someone else smaller.
Yeah.
And so I think if you asked most of my kids, when I say my kids, I mean the students that I work with, I think they would say that they feel respected.
Mm-hmm.
That I think of them as a real whole human person, not like a person in training or like a partial person who will one day be a real adult.
Right.
I think of every human as like a real whole human being. And starting with that can be very disarming as well. Not that my intention is to get past somebody's defenses, but certainly if we're going to have a meaningful relationship or conversation, there can't be huge walls between us.
Yeah.
And so, starting with that, like basic dignity and respecting, somebody's position and talking about it in a way that is, doesn't bring up more defenses can be, I think, really helpful. So for a young man who maybe disagrees with me politically or theologically or whatever, that doesn't mean we can't have a great conversation and learn from each other.
Right.
Because that's the other thing, man. And I know I've said this to you before. I work with adolescents and, you know, they haven't been to seminary, corrupted by theological education. They haven't been studying the Bible for as long as I have. They haven't been, having deep conversations about spirituality and faith as long as I have. And I learn something from them every single time. Every time. Because they have insights that I've never had before or never would have had before. Never could in the future because they're a different person. Or maybe they remind me of an insight or something that I held dear that I've kind of like just kind of forgotten. Or
yeah.
And when you believe, when you trust that it is true that the youngest person, the least experienced person in your life can say something to you that is more deeply true than you were holding on to before, that changes the game.
It does.
And it changes the kind of, like in my experience, the kind of ministry that I do.
Yeah, this is good stuff. 2 more questions I want to do before we move on to closing questions. You talked about like building a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to give some time here. When I think about, we talked about young men, I want to think about young women. Like the data that I've seen is like that young men and young women are kind of on these, I won't say polar opposites, but certainly have this kind of opposite trend lines happening of broadly, again, broad brushing here, young men kind of leaning more conservative, young women kind of leaning more liberal or progressive. Like how have you seen that? How do you minister to that? And then like, I kind of think even, how do you, speaking of walls, like tear that down? Cause like, I think to some reason, like we need, for the sake of relationships, to tear down some walls.
Yeah. Come together, man.
I mean, I'm just so glad that I have not, like, I don't have to navigate the dating field like now.
Yeah, same. I'm very happy about that. Gosh, I do see the differences. And, when I talk with young people, I don't see too many young women who are leaning hard right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see as many young men who are leaning harder left. Like I see it anecdotally in my own experience, and I've seen the numbers. I think to some degree, all that stuff ends up being a little bit exaggerated.
Yeah.
By that I mean, we are all more than answers on a survey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That every human, and I don't mean to like say that it's not worth looking at.
Right.
But we all have so much more to us than our stance on an issue. We all have so much more to us than kind of any type of label.
Yeah.
And so getting to those things, like, and it's not just like, well, find things we have in common. Yeah, that, of course, there's that. But just seeing people as more than their like most aberrant view in your opinion, right? Like,
and that's really like what, I don't know, social media algorithms, whatever has done to us, is saying like you are your top label or identity, right?
Yep. Or algorithms that
put
this podcast into your feed.
Yeah. I mean, bless this algorithm if you're listening, but
yeah, right. But on the other hand, right, there is an echo chamber that happens.
Right.
So having a way to like dampen the echoes, and bring people together. I mean, we have young men and young women in our group, and that helps with conversation.
Yeah,
kind of seeing and hearing opinions, and we can respectfully disagree, or we can maybe even push on when we hear something that we're like, I don't know about that. We have a space. We've created a culture where every question is okay.
Yeah.
Every question is actually welcome. That we, that there's nothing off limits, that we can talk about anything. But we do it in a way that honors other people, and I hope demonstrates the love that Jesus has for all of us, and that then we have for each other. So I think that's part of it. I decided long ago that I don't want to be in the business of indoctrination, that I will not do that. And so I'm not necessarily in the business of like changing kids into believing just what I do about things.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in, and I've found to be much more effective, I think, to help young people to begin to own their own faith, to explore what it is they believe now and how those beliefs are developing.
Well, let's move into this, because I did want to talk about this idea of like, I think we've talked about this before, this idea that deconstruction to some extent, like it is inevitable.
Yeah.
So you talk about helping kids own and explore, like, versus indoctrinate. Like, how have you seen that play out when you think about like kids who graduated youth ministry on to college and young adulthood? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of hand wringing about, stats and numbers about kids, graduating from church, when they graduate from high school. And, I think there will probably always be some level of that, right?
Yeah.
When you have full autonomy in your life, or a level you never had before, you're gonna make different decisions than you did before, or than your parents did for you. Natural, normal, probably even healthy.
Yeah.
Right. What I see is I have actually really good relationships with many hundreds of kids who have come through the programs that I lead or the ministries that I'm a part of. And a lot of them come back and say, and that is not to toot my own horn, but say, thank you for the way that you gave space for me to kind of develop my own faith. I didn't feel like I had to ascribe to a certain set of doctrines.
Right.
And that gave me the freedom to actually come back as a young adult and find Jesus in a new way. I've got one young woman now who talks about that every time I talk to her. And young men as well. And it's an honor to have that kind of impact on a person. And I don't know, maybe if I had a different approach to ministry where it was more rigid or more, maybe there would be even more. But I don't think so, because what it seems to me is that when the answers that were kind of spoon-fed to you don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because anything that's spoon-fed is just too simple, right?
Yep.
If you're just given answers or just given kind of, I don't know, like a rigid worldview, as soon as something comes up against it, then it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
It starts to shatter.
Yep.
And if I don't give somebody tools to think about this stuff on their own and to develop their own way of having a relationship with a living God who I believe is real and really here in this moment, even with these microphones in between us, then I'm just passing on something that was passed on to me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just like a photocopy, right?
Okay, we gotta do this because I know we're supposed to move on to closing questions, but I gotta ask you this. Like, to me, like, what you're saying is like, yes. And I think like I have a teenager and I'm like terrified.
She's awesome.
But like, I want her to have a faith. Like, that's like hugely important.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I find myself having to like, I feel like do this battle or tension or of like, how much do I don't want to say force feed or spoon feed, but kind of like grease the wheels.
Yeah.
And then also like give her space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing we were going to talk about, and I suppose this can be it, like, is like, where do parents play on the faith? Like, how do you, I mean, hey, I'm asking for me more than anybody. Like,
oh man, once I figure this all out,
you'll be publishing. You'll have that book published.
Book.
Yeah.
Man, I've had so many books I've thought of writing.
Yeah.
I ain't got the time, man. So, man, parents, all the studies point, and you shared an article with me recently. All the studies point to parents as being the primary faith influence in their children's lives. This is, I don't think it's refutable. I think it is true. Does that mean that you are like point by point teaching? No, I don't think so. I think you're modeling with your life. It's your lived faith that is going to make the difference.
Right.
And saying the right words isn't going to hurt.
Yeah.
But they're totally secondary. The words are totally secondary to the way that you live out your faith in broad view. Right. And I think that's also true for any of us.
Right.
Church. It's just that for your kids.
Right.
You are the one that they're looking at.
Right.
And that puts some pressure on, right? Because it's not just like say the right thing at the right time.
It's not like I can farm it all off to Mike or my youth pastor.
And you shouldn't, right?
Right.
Like, man, let's not let's not farm it out. Let's not hire somebody to do the spiritual babysitting.
Yeah.
Right. That's also super damaging. And so like in that article you sent, it talked a lot about like, well, youth ministry doesn't do the thing. It's like, why are we even bothering? And he came from a very particular mindset, and I respect those who say those kinds of things, because I think we need to hear it, right?
Right.
Like, what is youth ministry for anyway? And if it's simply cloning, like
Right.
spiritual clones,
Right.
then youth ministry is absolutely failing.
Yeah.
And in my view, youth ministry is not creating spiritual clones.
Right.
It's developing people who have their own unique relationship with their creator.
Taking this back to the beginning, when we're thinking about 90s youth ministry, do you think like that's an important change that's happened? Because like I think about like, I don't know about you, Mike, but I feel like the dream, every youth minister's, youth pastor's dream was to like, I'm going to have like a booming youth group with like our own separate ministry, like mini church, all that stuff. Like, I don't know if that's tracking for you, but like, is that like, when I think of cloning, it's like, I'm just going to clone this separate group of believers. And I feel like what you're trying to do, what you're talking about is this idea of like, we're going to be a small group within the church. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that metaphor makes sense. Like, it's not going to be.
Yeah. Some experts have talked about it as like a disintegration.
Okay.
With youth ministry, and then actually other kinds of ministries followed. Youth ministries happened to be the first to do it.
Right.
It ended up becoming this kind of like mostly disconnected blob.
Siloed.
Mostly connected.
Yeah.
Siloed.
Yeah.
To the church. And it served really no one.
Right.
Because, like kids were off doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not where you, learn what it means. Like, we talked about it a few times, like to model what it means to be an adult who follows Jesus is basically what I want our youth ministry to do.
Right.
Is for kids to have contact with each other, of course, right?
Right.
Learn from each other, but also to see what it looks like
to
follow Jesus as an adult, in addition to their parents.
Right.
Now, we also have kids who are part of our youth group who don't have parents who follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
For them, we're it.
Right.
Right. And for those who are lucky enough to have two parents who follow Jesus, right? So they have two parents and hopefully 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other adults they know really well who are following Jesus, and they know what it looks like in their lives. And so it's not all on the parents, but it's also not all on someone like, farming out to, a spiritual advisor of some sort who gets paid to do fun games and pizza.
And I sort of wonder if like we should transition on this. Like, I just read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, which is some years old, but like his point is like context is not everything, but it's more than we think about. And I'm just wondering if like that's what we've misidentified what youth ministry is for. It's like, it's more about providing context rather than like pumping out products.
Man, I think isn't that the church too?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
you're not wrong.
And like to some degree, I feel it deep level, like is what I'm doing in this very moment, in this second, pumping out a product.
Oh,
is it and that's not to like, I love this podcast.
No, I know. Yeah.
I feel this tension all the time.
Yeah.
We live in a consumer culture.
Right.
Where I feel the pressure all the time.
Producing content.
To produce content, to create a good program.
Right.
That I can send my kids to.
Right.
Where they're going to learn the right things.
Right.
To become
good people.
Yeah, good people or whatever it is. Or reach some sort of faith milestone.
Right.
Check a box that gets them into heaven.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
And I try to live my life and live in ministry in a way that is just not the case, that we're not pumping out a product, that is not a consumer commodity. But it's hard because we live in a consumer commodity culture.
And I'm going to ask you some of these closing questions here, and I've kind of tweaked this last question. So if you're like youth ministry pope, I mean, you're not Pope Leo, but you're, youth ministry pope.
I can answer both, by the way.
Okay. Give me both. What are you doing for that day?
Oh man. Well, youth ministry pope, and I would get rid of any game, a youth group game that embarrasses a kid.
Oh, love it. Like, I'm signing up tomorrow for that.
Right? Like
that papal bull, right?
Yeah. Because look, man, there's been a tradition in youth ministry. It's still happening in some schools, where there are these games where it's like, I don't know if they scar the kids necessarily, but like we can have a lot of fun together.
Right.
We can do a lot of things that build each other up without anybody feeling like weird. Adolescence is awkward.
That's enough awkwardness.
Like my whole, my philosophy around games and kind of how we play well together is very different. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, that's good.
But if I was Pope, like women in ministry,
okay,
ordain women priests, just like that.
Let's do it.
That's what we do.
I like both of those. Let's see quickly. A theologian or historical figure.
I mean, the one that always comes to mind is C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have dinner with that guy, and man, we just have to. I mean, I'm sure I'd feel very, very dim-witted for most of the time. I think he'd be so fascinating to talk to.
Something I've heard about C.S. Lewis is that he was kind of rough around the edges, and I feel like I could appreciate that.
Totally appreciate it.
Yeah. Something history. History. What do you think history will remember from our current time and place?
Gosh, I mean, this is hard to answer because it feels like even just 5 years ago, we'd have been like, oh man, the political division. And if only 5 years ago, people could see us now.
Yeah. Because even today we're like, COVID, what was that?
Yeah, right. I know. So I think there's when it comes to Christianity, at least, I think there's a movement toward Christian nationalism that I think will be remarked upon by history.
Yeah.
And this is cyclical. Like this happens, this comes and goes.
Right.
It's not the first time. It won't be the last.
Right.
But eventually we realize how dangerous and damaging it is to the nation and to the Christian.
Yeah.
To go so far from what I see as the way of Jesus. I think it'll be remarkable. I think we'll be talking about it, and maybe I'll have young people being like, "Is it true? They did this?" Yep.
Grandpa Mike Orr volunteering in youth ministry is retired. What do you hope then for the future of Christianity, or maybe even like? Let me say it this way: like when I was in youth ministry, I remember when I was a kid in youth ministry, I remember like this youth pastor saying to me like, "I don't want to be the next Moody."
Yeah.
What was his first name? No, whatever his name. Moody. He didn't want to be the next Moody.
Yeah.
Great revivalist for our maybe conservative listeners. He wanted to be like the youth pastor of like the next Dwight L. Moody.
Yeah, it's very good. Hold on, you did it.
Thank you.
Nice.
Like what? Like I don't know. We're again like
for me. I think of
what gives you hope about the kids in your youth ministry right now?
I have so much hope. Oh, friends, if you listened all the way till now, I have so much hope. Teenagers are so amazing, and this generation is so amazing. And there's some scriptures that talk about kind of like what heaven is like, or kind of like what the kingdom of God is like, and it talks about kind of every nation, nationality, every ethnic group, every language, everybody's gonna be present, kind of at this big banquet table. So imagine this giant table, and like most of our kids, it feels like they're ready for that. Like they're more open to it than so many adults. So my hope for the future of Christianity is that we continue to just pull up more chairs to the table, that we keep on. We got to add another leaf or build a bigger room to hold the table. And I know for the introverts among us, that sounds terrible. But, think of that as a metaphor.
Mike is talking to me, in case listeners.
Well, we know each other.
Yeah.
Is the idea of it's for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you have a hard time being at a table with someone who's not like you, then you're going to feel pretty hot under the collar.
Yeah.
In the kingdom of God.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I got to run, unfortunately, and I appreciate this conversation. We always leave folks with a word of peace on our podcast, and we get to do it in person. Mike, may God's peace be with you.
And also with you.
Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.